And then right behind you are the monographs and the herb journal if you want to use the herb journal. So we have the common name. Goldenrod is the plant we're talking about now. It's starting to, it's been flowering, and it's the season for it around here. So it's a good time to talk about it.
That's not one that grows like on the side of the freeway.
So it's not really common in Southern California down here. You do see it up in higher elevations. Where there's more water, there's, in the mountains, the ground can hold more water and there's more water sources. We just don't have a lot here. So no, you generally don't see it down in this area. But it is a really common weed in many other areas. Hi, Teresa. You have a lot of it there, I would imagine. Yeah, and so Georgia, Teresa says they have a lot of it in Georgia. Lots of it. We do have it, though, if you go up into our mountains and you go along streams in particular. It needs a water source for a good length of time for it to kind of establish itself. And the family is Asteraceae. So Asteraceae is what family? Do you know the family of Asteraceae? What other plants are in that family? It is the sunflower daisy family. So I want to show you actually right here while I've got this poured. I want you to notice, I'm going to put this in a cup so you can see it a little bit more clearly. And I want you to see those persistent bubbles there. Those persistent bubbles show some of the interesting chemistry of the goldenrod. Oopsie. And this is one, we've done this before in class. We can assess for the presence of this class of constituents by looking for the foam. See how foamy that gets? It's a very, very high amount of therapeutic compounds called saponins. And so saponins, the root word sapo means soap. So they're soap-like compounds in plants, and they have qualities similar to soap. Soap, we'll go into that later after we drink it. But that's just one thing that I was noticing pouring this. This one is very saponin-rich. And that will come into play when we're talking about the actions of the plant. So we can also see, get you some. You can grab the monograph over on the table over there. And we were drinking goldenrod tea, and this is the tea of the primary, the flowering tops. The flowering tops of the plant. So we wait until the plant is in flower and then chop off about the top third of the plant. So there's some leaf in there, but it's mostly flower. And they have different chemistry. So one of the things that I want you to see is in that jar in front of you, look at the foam in there, right? So that shows the presence of a lot of saponins, which we'll be talking about later. And you can see that sort of in your cup, the persistent foam around the outer rim of it. And then we can also look at it and see that color, that pigment. Deep, deep, deep yellow color, right? Or just a golden color. And that's also important. That shows the presence of likely a lot of flavonoids. The root word flavo means yellow. And flavonoids are they have a lot of pigments, right? We also know of flavonoids that are deep red and blue and purple colored, right? There's a lot of different flavonoids, but there is an important flavonoid compound that we see that is bright yellow, and that is quercetin. So that deep yellow color that is soluble in water. So there's other deep yellow constituents in plants. Can you think of other compounds that plants have that are a deep yellow color, yellow or orange? So carotenoids, beta carotene like carrots, right? So that color, yellow colors are carotenoids, another very important class of constituents in plants, but they're not soluble in water.
Is a carrot cloned?
Is a carrot cloned?
With two other breeds of.
Well, hybridized? Do you mean hybridized?
Yeah.
It is certainly selected. Yeah, there's all sorts of carrot species. There's wild carrot, is the blooming plant out in front of the walkway right there is a wild carrot, and that is the original species of carrot.
Oh,
which,
so there is an original.
Oh yeah, that's it right there.
Okay.
Daucus carota is Queen Anne's lace or wild carrot is that one. But it's very, very different from the plant that we've selected for, right? We grow a crop of plants and then we say, hey, you are more yellow than these are. And so you take those and you grow them, and some are more yellow than others, so you select those. And so over time, we have selected for traits in plants. That's how most of the vegetables that we eat, almost everything that we eat is pretty distant from the wild specimens. But that yellow color in carrots, you're not going to see extracted into water. So we can see that there is pigment in here. It's important pigments. It's likely flavonoids because of the deep yellow, and it has quercetin. So we already know, before we even take a sip, we know that it is rich in quercetin, flavonoids, and we know that it's rich in saponins. And there are things that we can understand about these compounds that we can know. So there's so many different ways of knowing with a plant, right? We can know it by tasting it and feeling it in our body, moving through our body. It's a really great way of knowing. And we can also know because we can assess for it. We can look at it and we can use our senses and our what we call organoleptic testing, the looking at a plant and understanding what we're seeing, right? By using our senses, by smelling it and tasting it and feeling it and shaking it up and seeing the bubbles, right? There's a whole lot of understanding that comes from that. So now we're going to taste it, and then we'll kind of feel the effects of those compounds. So north-southwest Australia, we have a lot of roadside solidago here in late autumn. Yeah, exactly. That's and it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful thing. I wish we had more roadside here in Southern California. So take a sip of the tea and just kind of hold it in your mouth. Feel what it feels like in your mouth. If you notice any changes in the tissues, we talked last week about how the mouth is an area that processes information. And so we can get a lot of information out about a plant by applying it to the tissues of the mouth and then kind of listening to our body. What is our body saying about the fact that this plant has now come into our body?
You can definitely taste the soapy.
Yeah. It's a very soapy taste and sort of mouthfeel.
Yeah,
right?
that kind of slippery.
Yeah, definitely. And sticky. Once you stop drinking, the tissue becomes kind of sticky because saponins break things up. They reduce surface tension of water, and so they help to move stuff out of the way. We use soap to move stuff out of the way, to emulsify things and break things down and clear them out of off of the skin.
Like an aftertaste.
And yes, a lingering aftertaste and mouthfeel. Yeah. You also feel a little bit of that tightening, right? And we generally see that in the presence of flavonoids because flavonoids strengthen tissues, right? They make tissues stronger. Yeah, yeah. So, and you can feel the difference between them. So the saponin kind of tightening is more that sticky feeling, and the flavonoid tightening is more that dry, astringed feel. So there's the presence of both of those that really kind of make all of that. And that speaks very much to how we use goldenrod in the body. This is what it does in the body, is that astringing and also breaking up and moving stuff out of the way.
What is the astringent flavor?
The astringent is a mouthfeel, right? So it's not so much a flavor, but it's a change in the feel of the mouth. That's what we're feeling. The compounds that tend to be astringent are generally the flavonoids, particularly the larger flavonoids, what we call tannins. And there's a lot of different tannins too, but they are often sour to bitter flavored.
This tastes more bitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, bitter.
Yeah. Yeah, not a lot of sour. There's not a lot of acids in here, right? Yeah. What other flavors do you taste beyond that? So some bitter. It's not unpleasantly bitter. I don't feel. What do you feel about the bitterness? Yeah, it's there, but I find it very drinkable. I really love the taste of goldenrod tea. It feels very good to my body.
Flavor.
Can you make this a video so I can go back to watch it again? Yeah, Teresa, we generally do. Last week was I don't know, the computer. I need to get another computer to dedicate for this. But we will generally have this available for watching afterwards. Hi, Mickey. Goldenrod is in full bloom, so goldenrod's starting to be in full bloom in other areas. So that astringency. So we know that there's that astringency, and we can kind of trace that through the body, right? When we take goldenrod over a period of time, we're going to see that tonifying and strengthening effect in the body. And it has some organ affinities. This is another thing that we generally want to pay attention to in a plant, is that generally the chemistry of we have the chemistry of the plant, and then we have where the plant kind of wants to go. That's a lot of the other stuff in the plant, the other things that the plant holds. And so with goldenrod, we have a respiratory tract affinity, especially the upper respiratory tract, the sinuses, and then the urinary tract. Respiratory tract and urinary tract. It also is really wonderful for the skin. We call the integumentary system, right? Skin and mucous membranes, right? All of the surface tissues of the body. And also has some benefits in musculoskeletal health as well. Topically, we'll talk about that. But with all of these tissues, what it does is it strengthens tissues in those areas. So we use it for weakness, bogginess of tissues. Goldenrod is a specific for allergies, right? So airborne allergies. Now, a lot of people associate goldenrod with allergies, the presence of the flowers producing pollen that is associated with airborne allergies. And while there are people who are absolutely allergic to goldenrod, it's actually a pretty low number. The fact is that the goldenrod pollen, if you look at it under a microscope, it's a big, big pollen. It's a big, heavy, heavy pollen. So big, heavy pollens fall to earth. They're too large to be carried by air. Tiny pollen is carried by air. And so you have air pollinated plants and you have insect pollinated plants. And goldenrod is an insect pollinated plant. It carries those larger molecules.
Yeah, I only drank a little bit. I can feel it in my lungs.
You feeling it? Yeah, those tissues. And what are you feeling in your lungs? What kind of change?
I mean, like not that it's tight, but I feel it like right there. Going down my esophagus.
Right. Nice. It's kind of fun to watch the movement of the plant and pay attention to that, and pay attention to that for the next couple of hours into the rest of the day. Just kind of see, hey, what's kind of going on with the presence of goldenrod. Doing that every day is a really good meditation on the plant and to kind of understand what happens immediately, and then the secondary long-term effects, and then the daily effects. But generally, you're going to see that tonification and strengthening of the tissues in the body. I was saying something, don't remember what it was. I will. And kidneys, kidneys in the urinary tract and the kidneys. So allergies. So when you have a plant that has a very large pollen like that, it's very rare that airborne allergies are associated with it. There are definitely people who have it, but a lot of people just automatically associate with allergies. They go, I absolutely would not want to drink a tea of goldenrod because I have that sensitivity. Very cute dog just went by.
But it could kind of be like, even if you did like a homeopathic type of treatment, right? If you're ingesting a little bit of like the tea.
That can, a lot of people do try to do that, taking a very small amount of something into the body to initiate just a mild response, and taking it over a period of time can strengthen that. And yes, absolutely, that can happen. Taking it as a tea can be a decent way to do that.
Yeah.
But goldenrod is really strengthening to the mucous membranes, and it really helps to reduce allergic responses. So we actually use goldenrod for treatment of allergies, and generally the incidence of an allergic response to goldenrod is significantly lower than people generally tend to assume. I'm sorry, you.
Yeah, it feels like I'm like I have like an oxygen tank on.
You have an oxygen tank, so you're really getting an engagement of your lungs. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, have some more if you like. So that quercetin that we see, that deep golden color of quercetin, we see that in the flowers also, that deep golden color in the flowers. Goldenrod is one of the plants that has a very high amount of quercetin, and quercetin is a flavonoid that is really beneficial for stabilization of immune cells that tend to produce histamines, what are called mast cells. So mast cells in the body are the ones that are responsible for freaking out in the presence of certain types of allergens. Mast cells are memory cells. They remember the allergens that they come in contact with. And so in people who have allergies, who have airborne allergies, they're the ones that tend to, in the presence of animal dander, goldenrod is a specific for animal dander allergies, ragweed pollen, pine pollen, grass pollens, whatever pollen your body is allergic to, that is a hypersensitivity response of your immune system, right? It's a bit of a dysregulation of the immune system. The immune system should not be freaking out at the presence of a pollen. It's just a pollen, but there's this overwhelming response. And in some people, that response is going to be way stronger, and some people that's going to be absent. And a lot of that has to do with the reactivity of those immune cells. And so quercetin is one of the compounds that we can use that will help to stabilize and quiet mast cells, the cells that produce histamine. So when you see histamine responses, which are the allergies, also hives, right? So any kind of histamine response, quercetin-rich plants are ones that we really want to go to for that, generally taken over a period of time, because they're strengthening those tissues. They're making those cells stronger. And whenever we're looking at something that is changing the structure of something, it takes time to build something, right? We have some immediate effects of the goldenrod, as you're noticing right now.
Is this like a stimulant?
It's not a stimulant, however.
It feels like it.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. That's one of the benefits of drinking a single plant like that, to notice what your body is feeling with it, and kind of know that this is what you and goldenrod feel like with a nice strong cup of goldenrod tea. This is what my body feels like. So yeah, it may be that for you, this is a plant that's really stimulating, and that's a really fun.
I've never had this before in my life.
Yeah, it's a really fun kind of question to go after once you kind of understand the energetics and the chemistry and the actions of the plant to ask why is my body experiencing this type of a response. It's a really fun thing to do because you get those responses from all sorts of different plants, right? These seemingly idiosyncratic responses that aren't in the literature. I didn't read that in the piece of paper, but you definitely want to acknowledge and respect the fact that that is how your body responds to it, irrespective of what is in the paper. Not in my body, this is what this plant feels like. And this is why we do these tastings, so that we can experience that and see also that it's not that way for all different bodies. It can be, there are wide-ranging effects. You are going to have stabilization of mast cells if you take quercetin, and that means different things to different people. You are going to have a breaking up of waste products in the body from the presence of saponins. That's going to feel different to different people. So let's talk about
water soluble in the tea.
Very water soluble, and we saw that, right? We immediately saw that. We saw that an abundance of this chemistry was immediately available. So tea is a very good way of taking goldenrod. You can also make a tincture out of this. Both of these are also soluble in alcohol. So generally, you would use a pretty low concentration. I would do maybe 50%, because there are also some carotenoids that are in here. There are some of those fat-soluble compounds that is not in this tea because they're not soluble in water, but they're present in the whole plant. They would be present in alcohol extraction.
And so somebody who suffers from animal allergies and airborne allergies, like 1 cup of tea a day?
No, I would do a lot more than that. Certainly at the beginning, because you are looking to change the quality of those tissues. You're giving your body raw materials for building stuff. And you're encouraging the body, the cells, to work a different way. And that is going to take some work. And how much that is depends on the person. It depends on her levels of allergic responses. It depends on her general health and vitality. It depends on her nutrient status, right? It depends on her sensitivity in general to things, her body weight and metabolic activity and liver function. There's so many factors that come into play with dosing. But certainly starting out at 1 cup, if she is a person that has a tendency to allergies and reactivity like that, it's always a good idea to start with a low amount and slowly increase it. You can always take more. But if you go, let's take, a quart of goldenrod tea a day right away, that may be something that is a bit much for her body. And if you find out that after taking a quart a day that she is sensitive to it, because it is an Asteraceae family plant. This is the ragweed family, and we do see a lot certain people who have allergies to this family. So always, start with a little bit and take more. Start with 1 cup, then take 1 cup in the morning, 1 cup in the evening, then take, a cup 3 times a day. Step it up lower than that if it feels more appropriate to go lower than that for the person. Yeah, but it is a very safe one. I've heard that goldenrod and ragweed blooms at the same time, and that is exactly, Teresa. That is the thing. So people associate all of their allergic responses to goldenrod because goldenrod is the big yellow thing. You're looking around, all of a sudden your eyes are drippy and you're all snotty, and you're looking around saying, what is it that all of a sudden got initiated this allergic response? And what you see are the big goldenrod plumes. And some goldenrod can get really, really, really huge. Ours tends to be kind of shorties. Respiratory tract, tonifying and strengthening, clearing the mucus and fluid out of there also. And that is a more rapid response that we see. So goldenrod is one of the plants that I do really like when people are having allergies for immediate relief, because you do get a clearing of the interstitial fluid, all the fluid that's accumulating there. The long-term effects are stabilizing those tissues, but the short-term effects are moving of stagnant stuff in the body. So that's another action of goldenrod, is movement of stagnant stuff. And so we're going to see that also in the respiratory tract, in the sinuses, and we're going to see it in the urinary tract, in the kidneys. This is a plant that is specific for kidney stones. It's one of the plants that's really beneficial for people who have kidney stones because it is a strong urinary antiseptic. The plant, as it moves through the urinary tract, it is having an antispasmodic, sedative, and kind of astringent effect on all of those tissues. So when there is pain on urination and gravel or kidney stones, this is one of the plants that we can use for that. That is one of the keys, is pain on urination is the indicator that we would want to see here.
And it helps move this down.
And it can help to move the stone out. If the stone is going to be moving, it can help to relieve spasms of the ureter and sort of calm those tissues down, so you don't have those nerves that are just freaking out. It can be very, very painful to pass the kidney stone. So goldenrod and marshmallow root. And a ton of tea. What's called irrigation therapy. So when you have an accumulation of waste products in the urinary tract, lots of fluids in the body, and goldenrod is a really good plant to do because it's not an irritating diuretic. A lot of plants that are diuretic, that are moving fluids through, can be irritating to the kidneys. And if you have some kidney weakness, it's not appropriate to use something like juniper berries, for example, is a really lovely kidney tonic, but you absolutely would not want to use it. It's resinous and it causes irritation of the kidneys. But goldenrod is going to be really beneficial for that. So kidneys, urinary tract, anytime where there's pain on urination and irritation, and where you want that kind of quality of stabilizing and strengthening those tissues and reducing inflammation and healing. The term solidago, the genus name solidago, means to make whole, to bring together. And so that kind of speaks to the plant's traditional usage as a vulnerary, as a plant that heals tissues. So this, when we look at its effects on the integumentary system, and on the respiratory system, and on the urinary system, on all of these tissues, what we're seeing is an ability to make those tissues whole, to heal those tissues, a vulnerary. So we use it on wounds also, widespread on any type of wounds. You apply goldenrod to those wounds and they are going to be stabilized. They're going to be strengthened because it is an astringent plant. It's strengthening and improving those. It's also got some really nice antifungal properties to it. So it's a very good plant for chronic fungal infections, especially when we see in like feet, right? Chronic long-standing fungal infections, really problematic, or in nail beds where you have accumulation of moisture and a breakdown of the tissues. The tissues become, in the presence of that fungus, in the presence of the chronic inflammation and the chronic moisture that's generally an underlying pattern of that tissue. Generally, you're going to see just the tissues kind of break down. They become weaker, and those tissues become more. It's easier for an invading pathogen like a fungus to kind of get in there and spread. Goldenrod is also something that is commonly used for, and this is a big other conversation that I'm not going to have right now, but it is commonly used for treatment of candida. Candida is a fungus / yeast that is a normal inhabitant of the body. Sometimes it can get out of balance. A lot of times it's just present, and people will kind of identify patterns in the body that are not necessarily the presence of candida. It's a very complex thing, and I think that a lot of candida is misdiagnosed and overdiagnosed. But in the presence of candida-like symptoms of a lack of tissue integrity and a spreading of opportunistic organisms and inflammation, a breakdown of structure, goldenrod is really, really effective. It works really, really well. So we can use it even if the diagnosis is incorrect, if we just look at the state of the tissue, what's happening on the person, what's happening in what we are looking at, right? This is the benefit of using the concepts of tissue states. We don't have to have a diagnosis that works all the time. We can just look at the person, look at the body, look at the tissues, and say, here's what I see. What I see is that the tissues are not able to hold strong. There's a lot of redness and swelling. Swelling is an accumulation of fluid, is an amount of stagnation, right? You have all of that fluid accumulated. There's a kind of a drop in metabolic functioning and a lot of metabolic waste products that build up in there. So we want the saponins to kind of go in and break up that stuff and move it along, move those waste products along, strengthen all of those tissues, regulate and normalize functioning of tissues with a specificity for these. It's a great plant. It is also really great to use topically as a musculoskeletal antispasmodic and healer. So you can infuse goldenrod into oil and use it as a massage oil, or as a base of any type of musculoskeletal topical treatment. It's also effective taken as a tea for that, just in general, because of its ability to regulate kind of inflammation through the body and strengthening tissues, but it is really effective applied topically. You can make a tincture out of it and use the tincture as a liniment if you don't want to use an oil. You could use the tea as a compress directly on there, or do a bath.
And if you're treating like a foot fungus or a hand fungus, would you do a soak, or would you?
No, I don't like soaks for funguses just because you're introducing a lot of water. Yeah, but tinctures I love. Get a tincture and put it into a bottle and just spray it right in there. The alcohol's drying. What I also really love is infused into vinegar, because shifting the pH downward really pisses off funguses. They really don't like it. Goldenrod vinegar, goldenrod infused vinegar is a really, really great thing to use for topical fungal treatment. Just get some goldenrod, put it in a jar, pour apple cider vinegar over it, let it sit for a little bit. If you heat up the vinegar, you can pour that on, let it sit overnight, and by the time it cools in the morning, it'll be done. Strain that out, and you have goldenrod infused vinegar. And so you're getting, the vinegar dries the tissues up, it drops the pH down that they don't like, and then you have that goldenrod applied directly to there, and you haven't contributed to that accumulation of moisture. So it works really nicely. So either of those ways I would do. And then also drinking it internally. So Teresa, how often, we kind of talked about this a little bit. We can drink it starting it at a low dosage and slowly increasing up to assess if you have a person who's sensitive. I know that I am not sensitive to Asteraceae family plants. I've had enough in a large amount that I know that I could drink a large amount of them. This is a very tonifying plant, tea, and I am generally a person whose constitution tends to be somewhat hypertonic. In certain areas, and I'm more loose in others, but in general, and my kind of nervous system constitution tends to be kind of hypertonic. So when I have a lot of tonifying kind of stuff coming into me, I can get a little bit twitchy. So if you are a person, sometimes we can think of those type of energetics and their effects on our mental state as well, our emotional states. Yeah. Could very be. And that moving, right? It's just moving fluids. It's moving stuff in the body, and that movement can be felt differently by different people. So yeah, it has.
I really need it because I have my nose is my left is blocked.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I always have to be doing like breathing exercises a lot.
Right.
So I'm drawn to.
Right.
A lot of breathing exercise, a lot of prana, meditation.
Sure. Yeah, it would be interesting for you to try some goldenrod for like a week and see how, because it does have such a specificity for those tissues.
It opened me up from here to here.
It opened you up all the way. Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, it's a great plant. So yeah, we have those immediate effects and then the long-term effects. It's great. It's abundant. It's a plant that, many of the people that are talking today talked about, that it's growing along the roadsides. Unfortunately, as we talked about, it's not so much here in Southern California in these lower altitudes. It is a plant that is more in high altitude areas. But you can get it from from a number of places. We have it in the Apothecary here, and it's very easy to grow in your garden because it is a weed. So it's too late in the season to start it right now, but you certainly could. So Teresa, we use the aerial portions. So when the flower goes into bloom, you cut off the top about third of the plant. So there's some foliage there. The foliage is certainly beneficial, but is the blooms that have the quercetin. You can't see, I'm sorry. There we go. That have the quercetin, that particular constituent. So we can see that, right? We can see the yellow of the bloom. That is the presence of the quercetin. So if you're having the greens, if you're mostly greens, you're not getting so much of that. So the blooming, when it comes into bloom, we cut off that top third and we use all of that. It is hard to, when you have an Asteraceae family yellow blooming plant, like Dandelion is classic, Arnica too, not so much Calendula, but certain plants, as soon as you pick them, they go into dehiscence, meaning they produce their seeds right away, and they go into the production of the dandelion fluff, right? The dandelion puffballs, what we call pappus. The pappus is the seed with the little parachute there. And so it's a seed dispersal mechanism that the plant makes to spread the seed. It's a very, very effective one. And that is one is used quite often across the Asteraceae. So this is one of the problems with harvesting the flowers, is that as soon as you harvest those yellow flowers, if you get them too late, and it's very easy to get them too late, most of them are gotten a little too late, they will dehiss. They'll turn into the pappus. So they turn into this white fluffy stuff. So they don't dry as that bright yellow flower. You'll never see dandelion flowers as dried plant. We have dandelion root, we have dandelion leaf, but you don't see dandelion flower because it dehisses immediately. Pick a dandelion flower and let it sit in your house overnight, and it's going to turn into a puffball, because that is the survival mechanism that the plant has. And goldenrod does that too. So it is very rare when you find it dried that you're going to see those yellow flowers, because that is the nature of the plant. But if you can find it fresh, you can harvest it and make a tincture or an infused oil from the fresh plant. And that's really, really good. That is excellent.
And once it dehisces, then it doesn't have the same.
It does still have beneficial effects. It's still used, and it's really good, but it is significantly lower than the fresh plant. Yeah. So fresh plant is awesome.
So a fresh tea would be way better.
A fresh tea would be great, but you would be having to go and harvest it and make it right then.
It'd have to be in your garden.
Yeah. If you harvest it yourself and you harvest it just as the buds have formed and they're just about to pop open, but they haven't yet, you go and you cut it then, and you dry it very, very quickly. Then they will open up, but they won't dehiss. Because the buds had formed, they were juvenile, and so they're going to progress in their maturation, but they're not going to progress to dehiscence because they were a little bit young. But they are going to pop and they're going to be yellow. It's so touch and go. I've had really good results doing that, and then taking the flowers and then putting them in my car. The inside of a car at this time of the year in Southern California, very hot, very dry. So it's really quick drying. It doesn't give them a chance to really mature. It's like, nope, you're like dried. So it's very, very effective. You can dry plants in 1 afternoon in your car in Southern California. It's a great plant dryer, the best plant dryer. So when I harvested, they all turned into fluff. The ones I harvested that were just green buds turned into little dried yellow flowers. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. You have to get them. Yeah. Right when they're in those buds. Yeah.
What about a dehydrator or dryer like
a dehydrator you can use? It is a good alternative also. Yeah. there's just not a lot of room in a dehydrator, and the flowers are kind of big, so it's kind of hard to put them in there. So the backseat of a car for me is it's just a little bit easier. I keep a sheet in the back of my car for quick drying. I pull it out and just lay it out on the surface and flip up one side, put the plants down, and then I just flip one light layer of sheet over that so that there's not direct sun going on it. And then I try to park it in a shaded area, protected area, and then
So you don't hang it up.
I will sometimes if I'm doing that, but car drying just works so well. It is just my drying method of choice because it's fast and it's not too hot.
And why not direct sun? It'll create moisture.
Because the things that break down plant material generally are oxygen, light, heat, and moisture. And so direct sun is oxygen, light, and heat all in one. And you're always going to have oxygen. You're probably going to have, some type of heat, especially at this time. So you want to modify as many of those factors as possible in order to maintain the integrity of the plant. Yeah. All right. So that is goldenrod. Let's see if I have anything else that I wanted to. Any of the itises of the urinary tract, cystitis, prostatitis, urethritis. Itises are inflammation. Most of the itises of the respiratory tract, sinusitis, bronchitis. Itises are dermatitis in the skin, right? So quieting down the immune cells, quieting down and stabilizing those tissues, quieting down inflammatory markers and making everything stronger, and then getting rid of all of the accumulated waste products with infinity there. If you think of those kind of larger concepts and actions and affinities, then you don't have to think of this is a plant that's good for this specific condition. We can just look at this is the nature of the plant. This is how it kind of presents in the world. This is what it likes to do. And you line that up. Are those virtues? Do those match up with the being that I'm looking at? And if so, then yay. It's a much wider ranging way of looking at plants, and it allows us to use the plants to be in relationship with the plants in a much broader way. And we can also see when that would not be such a good idea, right? If you have someone who is very, very, who has no fluids in their body, really dried out, really tight, really kind of what in Ayurveda is called vata, the dry, tight, cold bodies. Goldenrod by itself is going to kind of be pushing that pattern, and so it may not feel so good to that body by itself. We might want to call in some other plants to kind of modify, to give some moisture, to kind of quiet that down and stabilize that. Doesn't mean that it's not going to be beneficial for that person, but they might feel kind of twingy, the way that I feel when I use certain plants, like we were talking about, that generally tend to be tonifying. Yeah.
Goldenrod's often mixed with echinacea. Like I see that tinted golden echinacea at the store.
Yes.
Is that the best thing of strong, like respiratory bronchitis?
Exactly. Yes. And so you're having the echinacea is supporting more the immune cells, the white blood cells, kind of the circulating immune cells, and the goldenrod is more activating the surface immunity, also the body immunity, because it's a whole body kind of condition, but there's the affinities of the two. So yeah, it makes sense that they would be used together. Echinacea is also really good at stabilizing tissues and reducing inflammation. That would be a great wash, a wound wash. Right. So again, thinking of a different way to have, you have a goldenrod and echinacea combination. We can think of the virtues of echinacea and the virtues of goldenrod and see that would be a great wound wash. Put that in your first aid kit, and that would be just so good. It would be good for Yeah, for allergies, for immunity, for as a sinus wash or an eye wash. If you had like red, hot, inflamed, itchy, just a couple of drops of some of that tincture in water with some salt. Only a couple of drops because there's that alcohol in there. But that would be really, really nice. Yeah, but if you just use a few drops, it's fine. The dilution is the solution to pollution, and you just bring some water in there, and it's fine. You do want to have that salt, but yeah. I like using tinctures, a few drops of tinctures in water for eye washes. Works very nicely. I love eye washes. And goldenrod is really good for eye washes. It's also really good for sinus washes. If you do like a nasal irrigation, traditions are really, really nice, using goldenrod tea with some salt in there and using that for nasal irrigations. Again, any type of tissue that it's coming in contact with is going to be healed because it is a vulnerary. It makes tissue whole. So we can use that quality in sinus rinses and eye rinses. We can follow it kind of through the gastrointestinal tract and see that effect all along the gastrointestinal tissues as well.
Like I'm a plant and got watered.
You feel like a plant and you got watered. Yay! I love when I meet a new plant and it's like, oh, I really like you. You're cool. You and I are gonna like get to know each other. It can be very fun. Yeah.
It opened up.
Yay.
So if you were gonna do a nasal rinse and you only had a tincture, you would just do a couple drops in the tincture?
In a nasal rinse, I would put 15 drops in 8 ounces of water. 15 drops of tincture, 8 ounces of water, and a quarter teaspoon of salt.
And you'll still get the same benefits.
Yeah. No, you're not going to get the same benefits. Yeah, it is going to be better if you make a tea.
Oh, okay.
Yep, make a tea and filter it through paper, like a coffee filter. You always want to filter your tea before you put it in your eyes. You don't want to put any particulate matter in there. So make the tea fresh. You always make it fresh. Filter it through paper. Put salt in there before you filter it so that you're also filtering. Sometimes salt can have funky stuff in it. And then use that as an eye wash. Now that's the best. Yeah, best. So good. Yeah. And you can make like the tea to kind of drink throughout the day. It's a really nice thing for people who have allergies, especially hay fever, airborne allergies. When you come into your home, after you've been kind of outside all day long, you're accumulating a lot of dust and just particulate matter on your mucous membranes, on your eyes, in your nasal passages. It's just kind of all over those. And as we go home and close the door, and we might have, our air filters if we're very, very sensitive, or at least we're not out there with all that stuff. It's a really nice thing to do is as you come into your home, wash all that particulate matter off of the sensitive tissues. So do a nasal wash, do an eye wash, rinse that stuff off, just as you would rinse off a wound that got, gunk on it. Just clean it off. So cleaning those tissues off and then coming inside into your home and then going to bed and closing down and allowing those tissues all that time while you're sleeping to heal without the presence of all of the particulate matter that can have accumulated while we were outside. Doing that is just a daily practice. And you can make some tea and just at the end of the day, you just keep some of your tea and you use that as your eye wash, your neti pot. Do an oral rinse if you want to too, getting rid of any kind of stuff in your mouth that might also be contributing to that vigilance. If you have other patterns of kind of reactivity in your body, do that little goldenrod rinse. Just rinse all the mucous membranes of your body and say, okay, now we're going to bed and we're healing. So it's a nice way to think of using the plant. All right, so that is it for goldenrod. Any questions? Any other questions about it?
No, I was just thinking for the allergies, because my daughter actually suffers from a lot of animal gender allergies.
Yeah.
But for compliance.
Yeah. How old is she?
She's 8.
Does she have you tried glycerites with her?
No.
So glycerin is a compound that has a sweet syrupy flavor.
Yes,
have you had that before?
I have a couple of glycerin tinctures.
Okay. All right. So
Does it
would
work well
she?
with glycerin?
Yes, it does. So generally, a glycerite is good for a plant that is mostly water soluble. Generally, if you have a plant that requires a higher amount of alcohol, the higher the alcohol required to make the tincture, the less likely it's going to be to make a good glycerite.
Okay.
But if you have something that's great as a tea, yeah, it's likely to be really good as a glycerite.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll try
And
that
so,
one. 'Cause she's
yeah.
not gonna drink a ton of tea
Yeah.
all day, but
Yeah.
she'll do a tincture for that. It's not-
Sure. You can also, if she drinks juices
Yeah.
or is open to drinking juices, you can make a dilute one, right? Maybe not this concentration, but it's an 8-year-old. You don't need a high concentration of it for her. It's more important to get kind of a smaller amount into her body regularly through the day. The message of this strengthening and clearing and moving, we want to be offering to her a couple of times a day. So the chemistry of the plant, the message of the plant coming into the body is, remember, this is what we're doing. These are the changes that we're making. So small amounts throughout the day. If you can do I've always found lemonades to be really good with relatively neutral tasting.
Right.
Admittedly, this to me tastes relatively neutral tasting, but my palate is not a palate to be relied on to assess for mild flavors for other people. I try to be mindful of that. But it is, yeah, it's not. There's some bitterness there, but dilution and adding in other flavors. But yeah, the glycerite, and you can know.
Be safe for long term.
Yes.
Every day.
Yeah,
It's however until her system can kind of catch up.
Yeah. You know, it would be good.
Does it help repair the system?
Yeah, because you're stabilizing these compounds.
Need it forever. She would just need them more.
Generally, that's what we see when we take things that have high amounts of quercetin. When we use this type of therapy, because it's changing the nature, the action of those immune cells. Generally, after taking it for a while, what we see is that vigilance goes down, the reactivity of the immune system. Those mast cells are constantly producing the histamine. They feel less of a need to constantly having that histamine response. They're like, okay, we're cool. So you could wean off of it. And you can also modify. There's a lot of other plants that are rich in quercetin. We have nettles, we have onions. Onions are my favorite quercetin-rich. Yellow onions, just the cheapo yellow-brown onions. Really rich in quercetin. You can make caramelized onions and eat those. You can drink nettle tea. You can use goldenrod. You can, other sources of quercetin. Other sources of quercetin. There's a website called, I think it used to be, I haven't visited it for years, but it was called something like quercetin.com. Someone was like obsessed with quercetin. It's really cool, kind of a summary of information. And they give quercetin content in foods. So you can see foods highest to lowest. It doesn't really add in the herbs, but, nettles. Did I say nettles?
Yeah.
Nettles is also a quercetin-rich food. So just kind of relying on all of those, introducing them. And that way you're not relying on just one source, right? Maybe one source to get it in there, get that response. What I was thinking, what might be really good is to make a glycerite like lemon goldenrod, right? Fresh lemon and lemon juice as in place of the water when you're diluting the glycerin. Keep it refrigerated after that because you are getting some other stuff, but that would be very tasty.
Okay.
I think that would be a nice thing to use if she likes lemon.
Yeah.
But yeah, think of things like that. And lemon would be good also because lemon is also really astringent and tonifying to the tissues. And here you can get some vitamin C in there from the fresh raw lemon juice and all that other good stuff. So there you go. Okay, so next week is Angelica. Angelica, mostly we'll be talking about the root. So we'll see you next week. Thanks for showing up on Monday morning. Thanks to you folks in person and you folks online. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye. Oh, Rosa, hi. Thanks.